Toronto. A former officer in the Pakistani army, Haider has been a teacher, trainer, and currently blogs as a political commentator on Pakistani affairs. Welcome to you both. Syed Haider Mehdi, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mona. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna. Sheikhna, thank you very much for joining us. Sheikhna, I had a wonderful time reading the book, and for me, it was an experience that I think people will have if they read this book. But we'll just start with something really basic. You talk about the book and mention it as subjective recollections of past events and encounters and teachings that touched your heart. And you covered a canvas of 1,400 years of living and departed saints, about 100. So what compelled you to write this book?
Sorry, I just said I'm not that old as yet. It's 1,400 years. I can count 13, yes.
So, yes, Sheikhna. So these are, this is the living and those who have departed, as I mentioned, about 100 of them. So what really compelled you to write this book, Sheikhna?
Idleness. I had time and the luxury to reflect and to travel. Essentially, I think from my very young days, like most people, I enjoyed investigating. I enjoyed discovering. I was driven, like everyone actually, to expand their horizon and to see what is behind the next hill, the next country, the next culture. So it is a drive, as the Quran says, every self has got in it, sa'iqun wa shaheed, a driving spirit towards the original spirit, and a witnesser, which is the mind, the memory, the person, the culture, the personality. So we're all the same, but I was more fortunate in one thing, being born at a time that an old established culture in a special area, geographical area, with the boundaries of a special, if you like, set of beliefs and rituals and practices, was coming to its natural end in a way, in Iraq and Karbala and all of that. So I had imbibed what has been going on for centuries, especially in that beautiful, relatively small town, whose life was around remembrance, awareness of death, and being ready and prepared for it, cheerfully, correctedly, with no sorrow or, fear. So I was, if you like, at the end of a caravan that had gone through the deserts and the valleys and the oases. So, and I also had a very strong curiosity towards basic sciences. I knew everything connects, and those connections are according to certain geometrical, mathematical, if you like, patterns. And also I was very curious about physics and how things connect on their body sense and their gravity, and also chemistry. So I was very curious. Traveling was, if you like, subsequent to that, trying to find out what is Islam about, what is religion is about, where is God, why can't I control him? It will be wonderful to control God, and or to be controlled by him, but how do you do that? So it was really curiosity, search, and the luxury of being able to do it. The luxury, I was fairly fortunate from earlier on to have a career, to have a job, well paid, to be able to travel. And then it got narrowed about 40 years ago, 45 years ago, narrowed to the, if you like, the cultural or the religious part or the belief system part of the Abrahamic, if you like, religions. although I was very curious by the others as well, Hindus, the Buddhists, but it got a bit more restricted to that. So I began to really travel in earnest, try to meet whoever is alive, who is living it, who is in this world but not of this world. I knew already my parameters of how to relate. Who is here not perfect, but witnessing perfection, right. Not perfect in conduct, but knowing what is the perfect pattern of conduct. And so I already had my, if you like, test mechanism or testing kit. So I wanted to be with those who have lived fully, well, enjoyably, accountably, and yet there was an X factor in them that was touching them but not afflicting them. Wow. Really, that is what it was. Wow. Really. And I eventually found that it is within me. And that's it. So we can stop now if you want. Really. And within you, and within him, and within it.
It's within all of us. Shaykh, and this is so interesting. And this is so wonderful to hear. What really kind of touched me when you said that, she said, you know, I already had the testing kit. And I think the question is, does everyone have the testing kit? And if they do, why doesn't it manifest in the way that it did for you?
Why doesn't fire manifest everywhere?
Wow.
Essence of fire is everywhere. How do you light a fire? Its essence is already there, right. But it needs the right connectedness to the manifestation of fire on earth. In other words, it needs to have sufficiently strong spark for it to start living by consuming material. So it is fire itself, the essence of it is not material. But unless there is a material reception, a home for it, and food, it won't show itself. So the same thing is with us. The essence is in every heart. Yeah. The ruh, the spirit, the soul is everywhere. The human spirit is everywhere. But only when there is the right conducive reception for it, so what happens at the point of conception, it occurs. That's all. Life is everywhere. There's only life. There's only life that is true and manifest and perpetual and eternal and boundless. But it manifests only when the right environment, whether it is a mat or a rat or a cat or a human, occurs, then it shows. Wow. So that is justice. The source of justice is that. All of us as human beings potentially have the same, if you like, gift. But some are more dormant, some are conditioned to such a point that hardly manifests. Some others is easier and transparent, and they know the soul is eternal, and they're not afraid therefore of death, or they're not afflicted by sorrow. They're touched, empathy, sympathy, but that's it. So everyone has got this thing.
Mashallah.
Had I known that, I wouldn't have traveled. Really, I would have stayed near some wonderful resort somewhere.
Yes. But Shaykh, this really brings me to this wonderful quote in your book, which when you quote Ibn Ata'ullah, you say, "It is the intelligent seeker who watches for and deals with his faults, shortcomings, and veils gross and subtle," and you know the rest of the quote. So as this apparently, and not apparently, it is the essence of the spiritual journey, is for the intelligent seeker to be aware. And how did people like yourself, and I will kind of repeating this question from different angles, how did people like yourself and other enlightened beings become the watchers and the seekers and unworld aspects of the unseen. I think this is what people like myself and many others are curious and want to know, to be able to journey on that path as well.
Brilliant question. The watcher is perpetually there. What are you watching? It moves on and on and on, from very basic, simplistic, survival-related watching. If somebody's going to rush through the door and hurt me, or is it my mother coming to feed me, or is it my friend coming to keep me company, or what? Watching and reflecting on the environment is the earliest part of the rise in consciousness, because we are not separate from the outside world. The life began in a semi-permeable membrane. So we have to breathe in and out, taking in the outer and exuding. So there is constantly this interaction with the outer environment. And that is why more and more in the cities, the danger is for serious epidemics and pandemics because of that, you know. And a few hundred years ago, whenever they had a plague and so on, they said it is bad air, it is the sickness air. So they had to create chimneys and this and that, and also clear and clear and clear a few hundred years ago, all not allowing infestation. So we are not separate from what is coming to me, what is coming out of me. We are part of the universe in a full sense. So wellness and well-beingness implies a sustainable balance at the physical, chemical, material, intellectual, emotional, all of these levels. So it is the watchfulness in us, because we are driven towards excellence and beyond. No matter who it is, from babyhood, driven to good, good, good. And good is relative, but within certain boundaries. Good in that it brings certain measure of stability. It doesn't increase misery. It is helpful. It's approved of, and so on. Do you still love me? Am I still now, you know, even though I caused you all the aggravation for years, do you still love me? That's, and on and on. It is like that. We want to be loved. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be accepted. We want to belong. Whether it is a family or a tribe or a nation, we want to belong. Because in origin, we are belonging to a cosmic light that is not understandable by a feeble mind.
Right.
So
right.
We all belong to that force, to that energy, to the divine light, to God, whatever name you like to give it. We're all part of the same total cosmic manifestation that is actually leading everything back to its origin. So we're all witnesses, we're all doers, we're all reflectors, we're all evaluators. Until such time, I know all of this was to do with the shadow of me. It's all to do with the so-called self. The self initially is entirely obsessed with survival.
Yes.
It is the lowest animal self. But it begins to move slowly through grooming, through education, through parental encouragement, you know, to be a bit more generous, to be a bit more kind. It's a lovely boy, he's so generous, he gives his food. Now the poor fellow didn't want to give his food, but because it was already put in his little head, so he says, yes, come and take the food. So we are encouraged to be generous, kind, friendly, helpful, honest. Ultimately, it's all to do with honesty. Because as you are giving it, and you didn't want to give it, if you are honest about that, you've got the whole story. You are giving it to please others because they've already labeled you as being generous. But within you, you don't want to give it. It's your food. You are about to munch it.
Yes.
Honesty, 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 honesty will bring you to the absolute moment now. And if you're in the now, you're in eternity. You're touching the eternal.
Wow.
So it's honesty that is going to really liberate us from the so-called us, from the illusion of you are now this, you are that. These may be true because there are roles you play. You're crossing a road. You're now a person determined to get to the other side before the cars smash you.
Hmm.
Or you are here, have come with a gift you want to be approved of and acknowledged. Thank you very much. You're so kind. I'm so glad you remembered my birthday, and so on. Don't remind me I lived all these years and I'm still stupid. Not very good. So honest. If you are that all the time, then you don't have to remember what you said or what you didn't say or what.
Yes.
You're present. It's presence. That's why also during worship, most religions have a preparatory stage before you go into that stage of sublime, if you like, connectedness with the sublime. So you need to enter, you need to ask permission, you need to prepare, change your clothes, change yourself.
The wudu and everything. Yes.
Exactly. So it's necessary as a prelude to do all of that. Until such time you are fully connected with that which is permanent. And then, because you're still human and you still have to sustain the body and the mind, they still are dependent on the soul. They're still dependent on you to groom them, wash them, look at them, feed them. Here you are, idiot, eat more, not enough now. You get too obese. So then the next issue is you trust that from within you, the witness tells you, stop now. It's enough. You're just getting your trousers wider and wider. You can't do that. Or whatever. Or you are carrying a lot of animosity in your mind about others. Or you are full of expectation and anger and disappointment. So you will have more and more the presence backed up by the inner light of trust in that all is well eternally. And if it is not well according to that moment because you have done the wrong thing or you are not giving it enough attention, it will remind you, focus. So these two things of mindfulness and mindlessness dance together. Mindfulness is focus. You won't succeed in anything unless you're focused.
Yes.
Then you blame it on, it fell in my hand. No, you are not focused enough. Your mind was somewhere else, your legs went somewhere else. The whole thing is an integrated entity. So mindfulness, unless also it's calibrated by mindlessness, silence, you're all over the place, too noisy. That's what we have done now to the new generation. They can't sit for a moment in silence to be at the door of the most cosmically amazing entity, which is yourself. All the millions of mechanisms and all of the billions of cells in you and how they interact with each other, and the organs in you and the blood vessels in you, nearly 100,000 kilometers of the tiny, but with no concern. We just jump and mump and we say, unfortunate. No, nothing is unfortunate. It's unfortunate that you are not honoring the cosmic gift, which is beyond measure. So that's the whole story. It's very simple.
It sounds simple. It is such a challenge because one of the things when you were dwelling on this wonderful insight is that the starting point of this journey from the nafs to the ruh, the spectrum, really is complete and total faith and belief in the divine light within us. If that isn't there, one can't even start the journey.
I don't think you need anything. You just need to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You don't call it divine light, cosmic, and then you give it a name, and somebody else comes and says, no, we don't call it that name. And
okay.
On and on. It is already there everywhere, and there is nothing other than it, except in diluted or veiled forms. There is only haqq. There is only the truth. There is only reality. So all what we need is to be amazed by it and enter into the state of being in awe. It's amazing. It's awesome. This morning, there were quite a few ants somewhere, and something touched them that there is a bit more humidity here. And immediately the others got the message, and there were about 20 ants around that tiny little piece of, skin of a fruit. And they shared it together, and they start to pull it together to take it home for others to participate. It is this amazing communication and collaboration and cooperation and community. Here, two people of us cannot sit together. And we talk about community, we talk about nation. What nation? It's so divisive unless you know that that which is in you is also in every other heart. You will have no respect for the others. It will not, then you take your share of it, you do your bit of it, you may be an expert at producing something, wonderful. But respect all other life. It is respect of life.
Because all emanate from that same oneness.
There is only that oneness.
There is
Two-ness
only
is the cover for that. It's too powerful. It's like the sun, you can't see it. You have to put a shield. Two-ness, plurality, duality are necessary conditions for us to survive, let alone arrive. We can't. So until you realize it clearly, that there is only that one. It has no beginning and no end. If you have the illusion of the beginning, then it will have the same end where it began, in the infinitude of the oneness. That's
wow. Shaykh, this is so beautiful because in your book, you quote this lady called Irina Tweedy. And she says, and you quoted that the realization that every act, every word, every thought of ours not only influences our own environment, but mysteriously forms an integral part of the universe. And if we understand this, we absolutely that our smallest act and our smallest thought has far-reaching effect. This is mind-blowing that every act, thought that we do has an impact all across the universe.
Mind is a necessary faculty to connect the infinite, the boundless, the billions of, if you like, voltage in terms of power, to connect that with the limited earthly, chemical, material, physical, biological realities which interact with each other and create this world of ours.
It is a mind.
The mind is necessary. Equally, it's necessary to also switch it off. So mindfulness is to focus on what you're doing. Mindlessness is to be able to have no mind at will. Both. If you don't do it, you are not calibrated. And your mind begins to give in. And as you get older, you become more and more decrepit, and there's nothing left. Alzheimer, all of these things, because you have not exercised mindfulness and mindlessness. Be able to switch off. And without that, I wouldn't have been able to meet many of the people that I had in the past, allowed myself to meet them. I switched off. Everybody is carrying their own, megaphone. One, me. What about me?
Wow.
Boring. So once you switch off, you're attacking everybody. They're all the same soul, covered up with cultural baggage, with fears which are different, anxieties which are different, desires which are different, ambitions which are different, all of which is boring.
Wow.
They call it biography. Good luck to them.
Could I please just interrupt here for a second? Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I request somebody near you, Shaykh Fadhlalla, to please tie up the wind chimes? Because we've been messaging, but nobody's responding yet. And it's disturbing the sound feed a little bit. Please. Inshallah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Moana. So Sheikh, this piece about this mind and the connectedness with the universe, and I know earlier we discussed the concept of quantum physics and multiverses and the billions of cosmic forces interacting with us and the universe. did you find in your journeys and your enlightenment a complete alignment between the physical realities here, the universal realities of as we now understand from quantum physics? I don't know where we are in that understanding, and the spiritual enlightenment of the Sufi path. So the earthly, the universal, and the mystical.
I'm used nowadays to a way of looking at these realities that takes away many of the terminologies that had become very fashionable the last few decades, like self-realization, enlightenment, awakening. They all are helpful and meaningful, but enlightenment means the original, perfect, eternal light, which is a soul. So everybody as such, if you like, potentially are enlightened. But that light is so powerful, your soul, my soul, that it has to be veiled by the mind. It has to be, in a way, reduced so that it can take cause and effect in a worldly dualities, pluralities. So everyone as such is driven by their origin, which is enlightened. That's what everybody wants to say. That is why the first thing many people who have not been reflecting or contemplating on the purpose of their life and journey, immediately skepticism sets in. Oh no, he is not enlightened. Look, then that mistake. Of course, the Quran says it repeatedly. It says, they refuse to be near him. They said, well, this is not real. He is like us. He eats, he goes, he walks in the bazaar. It's not the same. The illusion that somebody who is enlightened is supra-human. It's nonsense. Within him, he has discovered the ever-living supra-light. But then comes super-light as a decent human being, then becomes also normal day-to-day, physical, material, human. So the whole spectrum is there. Now, I had been very fortunate in that I grew in a very, if you like, natural flow. I enjoyed life, and I knew I was very much loved by, my family and others and my people who looked after me. So I didn't need any more acknowledgement as such. And I was not overconfident either, reasonably confident. And I truly regard everybody else as potentially the same as I, but not as fortunate. I've had more time, more energy, more whatever. So the least I can do is to listen a bit. If I can help to reduce suffering, I do it. If not, I had no ambition to remold people or change the world. I saw the world has in it perfection within perfection, within perfection, within perfection. So it is like that. But there is the immediate survival mechanism which tells us, no, it's not good. It's a bad smell. Fine, stop it. But you find if it was not a bad smell, you would have been not just inundated with the madness and of the, you would have been swamped by the billions and zillions of bacteria. So it is like that.
Yes.
Whatever has come to you has in it a local issue, perfect or not perfect. You need to do something about it or not, but it is all within cosmic perfection. So you need to respond to it as a human through the mind, through this, because you want to preserve yourself, you want to have goodness around you, pleasantness. But then, as the Quran says, look back again, you find there was a perfection in what you did not consider to be perfect.
Wow. Sheikh, this constant battle between well, I don't say battle, but this challenge where the nafs overwhelms the person and one is drawn down, if I may say, to a baser level of existence, and stops the person from moving towards this one and only reality. And that is essentially the Sufi path, as we talking about your book. But Sufism has also been criticized as deviating from the teaching of Islam. But on the contrary, you say that Sufism was the response to the deviation in original Islam and the Muhammadi path. And that's a very insightful, enlightening observation. Could you share some more details on that, please?
All of the Quran is that. It's all about awakening after death, or awakening now, if you are fortunate enough, to the presence of Allah. There are hundreds of ayahs, literally hundreds. He is the first, he is the last. He is the hidden, he is the seen. He is with you wherever you go. So, and he who is blind in this realm will be more blind after death.
Oh, subhanAllah.
And there is another ayah says somebody who was miserable in this life, he is in the next life, realizes that he is blind. So he objects to God. He says, why have you recreated me blind and I had eyes previously? But if there is a sight and there is insight and there is illumined insight. So we are here for that. All of the prophetic messages, the enlightened beings, whatever, throughout human history, is to lift the, if you like, referencing of the human being to the highest within them, to the divine light, which is absolute, permanent, perfect, boundless, within the heart. If we do that, then you have as good a life here as possible. You live more responsibly. You don't pretend to be God or this or that. You live humbly, but knowing deep down that you are most honored by being a human being, because you're being given a potential of consciousness that is from the absolute consciousness. That means it's boundless. It's not consciousness of me and others and collective consciousness and the society and historical. You are tapping into boundless consciousness. That's all what there is. Then you have no fear. Then you know your life is not your life. It is a reflection of cosmic life. And cosmic life never ends. So you have no fear anymore about your death. That fear about death is necessary for a child. Otherwise, they'll jump and they do stupid things and they kill themselves. So it's necessary to preserve your life. Cry when you are in fever or ill, and object because you are endowed to preserving the so-called your life. Until such time, you know, there is only life, and your life is only a touch of that infinite life. So therefore, you know, it looks after itself. And when death comes, you're celebrating because you are liberated from the incumbencies of this cumbersome, if you like, body, mind, excesses, sleeping, waking, moving, running, breaking this finger, that, all of the other things that we as humans have to look after and takes a lot of time and energy. So it's a natural progress from obsession with life, love of life. Until such time, you know, there is only that. So your love for God or love for truth or love for whatever ultimately becomes the glue that connects you cosmically. Love is a connector. Love is an emotional glue. So there are hundreds of different strengths of glue. One is you like somebody because you play golf together. So there is a hobby glue. There is some other glue. And there is an enemy bashing glue. And love takes you ultimately to where the lovers lose themselves. There's no self anymore. That's why worship, all of the other acts that we enjoy in this life, you lose your mind. We even use it in everyday language. Mind-boggling. I lost myself. I was beside myself. What? There is no self. Self is only a reflection of your soul. Perfect life. But it has to be moderated. Otherwise, it's too powerful. You can't take it. That's why we say there's such a huge ego. You run away because you can't take too much of that shadow of other people's imposing themselves on you. You have to travel light. The more you are within your own soul, the more you find everything is perfect and it comes to you, even you not sure about the next breathing cycle that goes in. Otherwise, we'll be frantic. All the time I'll stop and say, look, I'm not sure if my third breath will actually come out. Please excuse me. I want to check. We take it for granted.
Yeah.
We take our soul for granted. We take God for granted.
Check out this. This is so wonderful when you were quoting from the Quran and you were talking about the love for truth and connect, and love is the ultimate connector and the glue. And I fail to understand, therefore, the entire Quran really is about this journey towards the sublime and the one. And yet, people still criticize this journey, which is what we read in the Quran, as deviating from original Islam. But it is actually original Islam. I feel that what we see, this religion with all its rituals and all its rust that it has covered, is really the nafs fighting the Sufi version of the ruh.
I also don't hardly use these words, Sufis or otherwise. It is our deen.
I know you don't.
The only way, because I want to be liberated from the illusions of otherness. But there are politics. The same way as there is ordinary politics that we all criticize and suffer from and discuss, there is also religious politics. And it has to do with an aspect of love, and that's power. Once you have been endowed with this thing that you are now a custodian of this thing, you are now a religious hierarchy thing, that power is very dangerous. And that's why they will not allow, they don't want to lose it. The same way as politicians. They will play every trick to maintain the power, because the most powerful, the nur of the divine is in you. There's nothing more powerful than that. So you are aspiring towards power. You use power as a ladder to be, but it's already there. You don't need a ladder. So it is a sickness. Once you have, that's why small power corrupts, and maximum power, as many of us try to acquire through wealth, whatever, politics, corrupts maximally.
Wow. And Sheikhna, this, how do you advise people to be aware and be cautious not to be caught in this web of power, which takes them away from the essential truth?
The Quran tells me, ذرني ومن خلقت وحيدا وجعلت له مالا ممدودا. That's the voice of God. It says, leave it to me. I am the only one who created him. Leave him to me. So I am relieved. They are like that. They are like, there's nothing to do with me. People. There is no P in the Arabic language, so they pronounce them people. So there are like all kinds of people. If somebody has come to me suffering and so on, asking, and if it touches me that this is genuine, I may say something. It's not my business. My business is to save me from me. But in the meantime, I cannot stop interacting with neighbors, others, and so on. Until you are fortunate enough to be living like me, I have no neighbors. So there you are. Soon you end up being Kruger Park. And there are much nicer creatures until we are destroying them. So it is a reminder, suffering from other people's mischief, to remind us that we are not doing our bit, they are not doing their bit, they have a duty and a responsibility, and they are avoiding it for any other excuse.
Dikta, when you talk about pain and suffering, and please pardon me for using the words that I know you don't use, like enlightened beings and spiritual, etc. But I will, for the sake of context and for many of our viewers, I will use it that there is a common understanding that people who have achieved a certain level of maqam, and calling them enlightened or spiritually, more insightful, have undergone deep personal pain and suffering to reach this state of maqam from someone who's lucky enough even to have a momentary illumination, which you call ishraq. Uh, so, is it essential for everybody who's on this path to undergo pain, suffering, loss, deprivation to achieve this kind of enlightenment?
Suffering is due to my own evaluation and assessment of a situation that I'm attached to. So I am doing it. I've already created, if you like, that tableau that will end up being in more and more suffering, greater and greater, because I had expectations. So I am causing suffering to myself so that the higher self in me, or my ruh, or the witnesser in me, tells me, hey, you idiot, you're doing it. So stop it. And we say, but how can I live without being attached to others? Be attached, but be also willing to open your hand and say, please, let it go. Doesn't matter. So as a human, you are connected. You are being born from a womb. So, and now you are in the earthly womb. There is double, double, double all the time. So from the mother womb into the earthly womb, it's the same, similar. And that there is duality, good, bad. You can't be 100% sure that only what you like that as or evaluated as good will be used. So what you call suffering, we make such a big thing out of it. Most people, if you sit quietly with them, say, you are such a patient person. You're putting up with so much. Especially if it is a woman in her mid-50s, 60s, whatever, you say, my God, this fellow knows a lot. So, who has not suffered from the stupidity of a husband or a son or a daughter or an uncle? Everybody has. They say, no, but you are being very special. It's nonsense. Everybody is special. Every ruh is special. So it's only a mental, if you like, framework. It's if you consider it as a normal thing, because you were attached, you now have to be detached, and the two conflict with each other. No, they thought, what's suffering? What if they came and made a bit of noise and they went here? We have become too worldly, too shackled, trying to imagine we can do it all here. The God-chosen people or God-chosen land. This is God's land. Therefore, we're going to kill you. There's only God. It's a frame of mind. This is more sacred. Or they found that the priest and so on were having an orgy on the thing, so they burnt the entire the church. Now they have to consecrate now another. The whole thing is divinely ordained, divinely inspired, divinely designed. But we as humans say, no, this is bovine, this is very low grade, this is high grade. Fine, nothing wrong with that either. But that is only on a human level. Are you only human? Why do you want to sleep? Why is sleep in the last 50 years became a necessary ingredient for good health? Or remembering death, which was not the case. 70, 80 years ago, it was a taboo. In the West, in the so-called polite society, you would never talk about death. Polite society. Death is a natural cycle. Anything that is born will die. And that's an aspect of me. It's not me. The real me is the light that gives me the illusion of me being this or that. And that light is not subject to comings and going. That's why it's reliable. That's why it is permanent. That's why it's perfect. So the issue of the Sufis, going back to them also, they talk about the perfect self. There's no such thing as a perfect self. Self is an image of the soul. There is complete self, kamila, completed, not perfect. How can you be perfect? You are oozing, you're sneezing, you have to go to the top, you have to rest. But you completed the knowledge that the self is an echo, the shadow of a perfect light that is ever there. Therefore, I make allowance for it. He needs to sleep, fine. So that's why people objected to Muhammad when he was in the bazaar and eating and said, he's not godly because he is like us. Of course, he has to be. Otherwise, how would we listen? It has to be a language that I understand, a culture that I understand. Wow. So I relate to it. And that's why even Jibreel appeared to him as a most beautiful, handsome person. He knew his familiarity.
Yes.
So that's why al-Madrasa, the mother is the first school, because that's the first thing of being impressed with. But if she is full of anger and rancor and misery and so on, so poor child has a lot of, upstart to difficult hill to climb from earlier on. You have to be careful. We are nowadays, you can't move an inch nowadays in so-called civil society, especially in the congested world. You need a license for sneezing, a license for moving, a license for fishing, a license for garbage collecting, a license. What about license for children? Look at it. Look at what we're doing in the whole world. No, not a license for that. No, that's all right. So the social services have to suffer from more and more potential criminals, left, right, and center.
So this is a huge problem for society, and as an individual, when I asked you the question about the suffering and pain of the 100+ odd people that you mentioned, the vast majority of them lived extremely frugal lives, alone in very simple environments, basic food, no money, some of them suffering from a lot of ill health, and hence the question that was that an attempt to curb the desires of the ego, and hence the divine light would cover more of the space within their self?
You see, if you refer to the light of the one, yes, there is only perfection and harmony.
Yes.
Even the ego. Initially, for a 5-year-old, he has to develop the ego. 15, 16-year-old, every now and then he may get a punch on his knee, on his cheek, whatever. By the time they are in their 20s, they're careful, they're considerate of others. So it's not just ego. By the time you are 40s, if you have not discovered that your ego was your best friend, because it misled you many times, once you discover your ego as your best friend, that means there is only goodness from the origin. Earlier on, it was a cause of suffering. Later on, you say, no, Shaitan is my best friend, because if I follow him, I will suffer. So he is the best friend to warn me. Don't do that. What are they doing? So that's it. There is only friendliness. There is only goodness. There is only love. There is only the divine light. Depends where you are on the ladder of rise in consciousness. Until such time you are calibrating all the time with pure consciousness, with total consciousness, with divine consciousness, then fine, that's all right. Then you are accountable instantly. Not you come a week later, please excuse me, I punched you too hard. I should have not. What about that moment that you are beside yourself? Please excuse me, I was beside myself. Beside yourself, because you were suddenly engulfed by a poisonous atmosphere of anger or suspicion or whatever, emotional burnout. You can't do that. You cause yourself harm, more harm, and you cause others harm. So awareness, genuine interest in the intention behind it and the action you are taking. It is awareness of the moment. You will have no regrets. You do the same thing the way you did it if you are given a chance to redo it 100 times, because you are aware. But not if you are not. That is why a lot of guilt comes in, fear comes in, regrets comes in, because you are not aware. Your emotions carried you to another zone and you acted foolishly. That's all.
So Shekhar, there are three things that you mentioned here. One is awareness and presence, clearly. The other is, you haven't mentioned it, but you alluded to it, is, there's many times you've said die before you die. And the third thing is that once you're fully aware, then you have to leave everything to Allah. So just for the sake of my understanding.
I haven't said that.
You haven't said
saying it.
I'm saying
no, where? Oh, good. Fine. That's nice. But it becomes another religious, peg.
Hook, yeah.
There's only Allah. Everything's emanating from.
Everything.
What about me? You've given me also the hands and the mind. I have to act. This is avoiding human responsibility. We have created all the miseries around us, all the poverty, because of our love for profit, more money. 500 homes everywhere and no home anywhere.
Wow.
That's it. We have done it collectively. And the richer is the nation, the greater are the problems politically, economically, humanly, in every way. It's not solvable because we have told everybody the sky is the limit. You can go anything you do. You can do anything. You're free. That's where we have ended up. 100 years ago, there was no such thing. Even the word free is hardly used in Arabic. There's no such thing. Responsibility. You find for me the word freedom in the Quran. It's you are responsible about yourself, and yourself reflects others. What are you doing? Why? Isn't that too much? And so on and so on and so on. Even the gown they use in the universities is a legacy of Andalus, where many of the well-off Europeans would go to in those days, there were important schools. They taught whatever was known of the Greek philosophy and others, and some basic science. So the son of a king or somebody very well off from the north, sitting next to a peasant from southern Andalusia, they had a gown, so that you don't see the silk robe as against the tattered robe. And even the thing on the head, it was a Quran. By the time he had finished his schooling, so he's tapped by that on his head with a physical Quran. But now you are qualified as a human being. So that's why, same thing, our deen has now become symbolic. Shambolic.
And Sheikh, now this curse of conventional forms of religion, you make a wonderful point in your book. You say Makkah represents the soul of Islam and Medina its body. If Medina does not live by the light of Makkah, it ends up fascist and despotic. The result is the current wave of fundamentalism. And so this is so wonderful. Please dwell on this a little more.
Thank you. Look, we are two.
Yes.
Anything that any human being, any living being is experiencing is two. Acceptable, rejectable. Yes, no. Whether it's a rat or a mouse or a cat, the same. Yes, no. Yes, no. Yes is unified. The unity was the, if you like, singularity, where the entire, whatever there is in the cosmos was at one. We cannot fathom it. It was at one. It was not even an atom. It was not even as big as an atom. There was only that singularity.
Singularity.
Serious thing occurred. Spread out. Let it come out. So the multiverses. So everything sings its own appearing, if you like, qualities and outer characteristics. That's all. In reality, there's only one. So Mecca and Medina, if you like, the bifurcation. Mecca is you run around like a maniac around a symbolic house of God. Everything is a house of God. Wherever you turn is the house. Wherever you say, he says, wherever you turn is the face of Allah. No. فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا ثَمَّ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ.
Wow, 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 wow.
Everything is by God, from God, unto God returning. Now, we as human beings, we need to have also a bit of a social, if you like, reminder. So he said,
Yes.
no, this is the house of God. Or if you go in it, you mustn't fight, you mustn't this, you mustn't kill life. You know, when you are there also, you mustn't even kill a mosquito
Yes.
when you are in ihram. Yeah. So it is encapsulating the fact that all life is sacred because it wants to perpetuate life.
Wow, wow, wow,
So
wow,
there's
wow.
a touch of reverence to the life giver. So now, this is, if you like, Mecca. That is why the Meccan ayahs give you universality. It's true at all times for everyone. But
Right.
then, soon after that, like-minded people, they want to get together. So there are neighbors, there is community, and there is a town. And then there are amongst them mischievous, amongst them lower in the hierarchy, if you like, of awareness.
Right.
So there has to be rules and regulations. There has to be Sharia. There has to be laws to stop abusiveness. You can't do that. This is not allowed. This is allowed. And so on and so forth. And of course, being a clever being, he or she can manipulate it. So you'd have a lot of the letter of the law very different from the spirit of the law.
Wow, wow.
It's really clever. We're idiots. We all suffer from it. So we are now, I think, globally at a stage where all what we have tried to do, man-made laws, regulations, countries, or all of what we consider to be important, constitutional, if you like, laws, and is coming to a very frail end because the individual have not accepted total responsibility, awareness, and accountability founded upon total honesty. Once that begins to happen, then all is easy. At the moment you can get away with murders if you have enough money with the lawyers who postpone it. Eventually everybody's dead. Too clever. That is why quality life has been frail and has been, if you like, withered. So that's it. It will come back. It will revive itself. The whole thing now is global. 100 years ago, it was not global. Our world now is much, much better than 50 years ago from that point of view. But we say it is terrible, worse, because we are getting the news from everyone. You see, no. Humanity is rising and is suffering collectively. Some people are being persecuted wherever we are affected. So from that point of view, there is a unifying field of all the humans. But there are millions and millions of not sophisticated in their knowledge and approach as to the map of life. They have to be also lifted up. So it will come maybe after a few generations, but right now we are entering into the darkest period that possible.
Oh, wow. Sheikhna, this is saddening, but it's also enlightening because obviously there will people, society will come out of this. So the question is that we've really been here talking about the Muhammadi path and the Quran, but there are other disciplines outside the realm of Islam, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, in Christianity, and I'm sure many other areas. What is the universality of their messages as compared to Islam? Because everything emanates from the one.
At the time of Muhammad, there was a great deal of oppression and abuse and injustice. So in a way, Islam, especially 60% of the Quran, which are Sharia-related ayahs, was to bring up a certain measure of justice, equality,
right,
which did not exist. So for a few hundred years, many other people tried to also use that knowledge and benefit from it. Even the American Constitution, and so on and so on. So there was a great benefit until you know, after the Second World War, in a way, you find human rights and basic constitutions of most countries reflected each other. You can't abuse others. There is a court, and the just must be someone who is not biased. He must evaluate it. See why you did that. Were you under emotional strain? Nowadays, I think people will get away with murder. They say because I was mentally disturbed or deranged. As most people are mentally deranged. Yeah, because for the next 20, 30 years, the key thing is going to be mental health. But let's look around. Most of them are mental. So it has served its purpose. It served its purpose and made humans realize that their essence, their origin is much greater, much higher. Therefore, drive for excellence is encouraged. Drives for doing good is encouraged. Being good for maximum number of people, longest period of time is understood. This is a very good thing to do. And people will begin to realize also a lot of other charities and so on are lies and camouflage for abusiveness. It's a public relation gimmick. More and more and more. We're coming of age now. That's why I think once few million people accept the basic model that you are an infinite light and you are responsible to that, and if you refer to that regularly, your life on this earth would be wonderful, smooth, and next life is eternal anyway. So good luck, you've done it. Until there are a few million people like that, you know, we will still be suffering from abusiveness of business people, politicians, religious people, and all of them.
And Sheikh, there are people in other religions who are also striving for the same goal in Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. How do you see that?
I see there's a great unification. The Buddhistic model was for you becoming a Buddha, for excelling in mindfulness and mindlessness. Wow. They did not need to have all of the other laws and regulations about family, about marriage, about divorce. And so. It was a very cohesive family. They were together. They could not survive unless they were together. It was a rice culture. Unlike the Mediterranean, it was a semi-nomadic, everybody to themselves. So there was no need for all of that. There was a respect for the women. There was this, there was that. There was hardly any of those needs, whereas the Arabs and the others needed it. So it was min anfusikum, from amongst yourself. You know, what's your problems? You know, and so on. So now we have emerged in the evolutionary sense to a point that every person, individual, is suffering. And we don't want to suffer. Or else stop it. Realize who you are and do your best. Have an occupation. Again, be honest. Trust, and do your best in the outer world.
Subhanallah. Sheikhna, yes, I know, Sheikhna, I'm being threatened by Mona to cut this short. I haven't even covered half the questions, Mona. I think we need another opportunity with Sheikhna to continue. But Sheikhna, thank you so much. I am so deeply humbled. Thank you so much for your time.
I enjoyed it. I'm very fond of you.
Thank you.
Delightful. Thank you. And thank you, Mona, for putting us all in our places until we find that we have no place. There is no such thing as space and time. It's only an illusion for this body to occupy something. Until we know there is nothing that you need to know except just leave it to it, trust in it. And if you are given a role, do it as best as you can with humbleness. Thank you very much.
Thank you for a wonderful, beautiful session. Thank you so much, both of you. It's really with regret that I must push us to wrap up, but only with the hope that we can do this again next week, inshallah. Haider, if you are available, Shaykh Fadhlalla, if you are available.
Anytime. If I'm breathing, I'm available, inshallah.
Thank you, Shaykh Fadhlalla. We will return to look for our license for sneezing. And the words that you have just said, that the deen has become symbolic, but in fact it's shambolic, are just kind of resonating through my head. But ultimately, as you say, love is the glue, and that is what you have been reminding us. So thank you to both of you. What
Even
a wonderful
though
gift
it
for
is,
the weekend. Thank you. Assalamu
it is
alaikum. On
symbolic
behalf
and so
of
on, it is better than nothing. Still is good to have some referencing. Accountability in the shallowest thing is better than no accountability. Until it becomes total accountability, you can't do otherwise because you suffer yourself and you love yourself, so you won't do it. It's good. There's only goodness.
Alhamdulillah, shukrullah, subhanallah, really just all thanks and praise be to Allah. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you all, the team behind the scenes making this all happen. Bless you all. Assalamu alaikum. Goodbye.